Welcome everyone, this is Honest Restart. For this video, we're gonna have a bit of a discussion on what exactly is going on with Retro Studios. Now we've talked about this before, we know they are working on Metroid Prime 4 now, but we don't know what's sort of been going on since they've released Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze back in 2014. We are now in 2020. We are talking about 6 years where there hasn't been a major release from Retro Studios. Now, that's not to say they haven't been working on some things here and there, but in terms of major projects, in terms of a big AAA game like a Metroid Prime, like a Donkey Kong Country Returns, things of that nature we haven't seen from them since 2014. So what's going on? Why would Nintendo let Retro Studios develop Metroid Prime 4 if Retro Studios was in such disarray that they were unable to make any game over a 6-year period? That I find to be very peculiar. Maybe they didn't make a game, maybe there's a reason for that, or maybe there is something and we're going to see it really soon. So that's exactly what we're talking about today. What exactly has been going on with Retro Studios since the release of Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, besides Metroid Prime 4? Now before we delve further into talking about all of this, I'm going to quickly talk about our social media. I got a Twitter page, you can check it out, it's linked in the description below, as well as our Discord community and the Patreon page. If you're interested in any of that, check it out, it's all linked in the description below. But anyway, as I was saying, this isn't the first time I've talked about or speculated about what's going on with Retro Studios. This is almost as if more of a update video on that, sort of combining all the different things together, and maybe we'll have a different answer this time around. I've talked about this before, but the last time I talked about this was back when I thought Fox Grand Prix was real, and I thought maybe that's the game that they have been working on, and at this point, I don't think it's real. I kind of want it to be real, but I don't think it is real. So that's one of the things we're going to be talking about today. We also recently got some updates on what apparently were games that Retro Studios was working on before Donkey Kong Country Returns. Back during the DS and the Wii days, there are these pieces of concept art that came out recently that supposedly were about games that Retro Studios was working on back in the day. That includes a game centered around Sheik and perhaps touching on the Fallen Hero timeline for Ocarina of Time, and also another game for the DS based off around King Boo. And when you consider those ideas and the games that Retro Studios has already made and the ideas of games that they had before they made Metroid Prime, a lot of the ideas they've had have been really cool, hardcore-centric kind of games that I think we would have all have really loved. Obviously, not all of these ideas have made it out, and it's very likely that some games that Retro Studios has been working on during the Wii U and Switch era haven't materialized. They may have had a lot of ideas that didn't make it to being fully fledged games, and there probably was a project or two that was cancelled. And maybe that alone is the answer, that Retro Studios had been working on things since Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze back when that released in 2014, so during this entire time span they may have been working on a couple big projects, but they've all been cancelled, and now they are working on Metroid Prime 4. That is possible, but I'm skeptical that that's exactly what's been going on, because here's the thing. Metroid Prime 4 is a big deal, okay guys? This is not going to be a small game. Nintendo wants Metroid Prime 4 to be on the same level as previous Metroid Prime games. Now what does that mean? That means a Game of the Year kind of game. Metroid Prime is one of the highest rated games of all time. Metroid Prime 2 and Metroid Prime 3 are also very highly rated. They were also in that level in terms of Game of the Year conversation. All of these games are incredibly strong critically. This entire trilogy is of very high critical acclaim. In other words, very high quality here. And when they had that update video talking about the delay for Metroid Prime 4, that was in the same way they revealed the delay for Breath of the Wild back when they had to delay that game. That's the only other time Nintendo has had a dedicated video that they've released to announce a delay for a game. I feel like that's important because that suggests just how carefully Nintendo is treating this game. They're treating this game like it's going to be a Breath of the Wild level kind of game. And a Breath of the Wild level kind of game is one of the greatest games of all time. It is incredible, and this is going to be a big deal. But not just because it's going to be a high quality game, but also because there's a lot riding here in terms of the Metroid franchise. Metroid deserves, in my opinion, and I'm sure many others, to be just as praised and played as Mario or Zelda. All three of these franchises were important back in the NES days, but both Mario and Zelda have continued to grow and excel while Metroid just hasn't been able to have the same level of success when it comes to actual sales. And on top of that, there hasn't even really been a strong Metroid game in a very long time. So when Metroid Prime 4 comes out, it has a huge potential to bring the Metroid series to a level that it hasn't really ever been in, and it could revitalize the franchise and do so many great things. We could be seeing more Metroid Prime games after this if this Metroid Prime 4 is an incredible success. And Nintendo really wants that. They want the Metroid series to do really well. Imagine if Nintendo had another Zelda-like kind of game that they could release more frequently. That could be the Metroid Prime series. It is on that level quality-wise, just not sales-wise. But on the Nintendo Switch, all sorts of games are selling now. A lot of that has to do with the Switch and how you can take it wherever you go, and a lot of people are buying a lot of games just for that reason. But on top of that, with social media now, it's a lot easier to sort of share word about a game and make it known just how good it could be. The point being, Metroid Prime 4 has a lot riding on it, and Nintendo's not just going to hand over this project to Retro Studios if they have not been able to make a game in 6 years. I just feel like that is not likely. Now, according to Imran Khan, Retro Studios had a demo that they showed off to Nintendo, and once Nintendo saw this demo, they were impressed enough to hand over development of Metroid Prime 4 to Retro Studios, and this was after they decided that they perhaps should scrap development of what they had going on at the moment and let Retro Studios make a new version for Metroid Prime 4. Assuming this is true, which I think is fairly likely, Imran Khan has legitimate sources, Retro Studios impressed Nintendo when they showed off this demo. But at the end of the day, it was just a demo. They need to have had done more during that time. In other words, while Retro Studios hasn't had anything publicly come out that is a full-fledged game, Nintendo, very likely, obviously because Retro Studios is a part of Nintendo, knows about what they've been doing throughout this time since the release of Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze back in 2014, and based off that work that was never disclosed to the public, at least up to this point, and what they showed off with the demo, Nintendo decided that it was time to give back the reins of Metroid Prime 4 to Retro Studios. That's my impression at least. But if that's the case, what exactly had they been doing during this time? That's kind of the point of this video. What exactly is going on with them? What have they done besides Metroid Prime 4? Just ports of Donkey Kong games. Nothing else. As mentioned earlier though, there was the rumored Star Fox Grand Prix game. Eurogamer even corroborated this rumor that was going around saying that they had heard similar things, but it never materialized, and a lot of people have been suggesting that it's been a hoax since then. What I believe happened is that when we got Starlink and the DLC that included Star Fox racing elements, perhaps someone from Eurogamer or several people saw that and thought that was related to the rumor, and maybe that's what went on in terms of this whole Star Fox Grand Prix rumor sort of propelling in terms of a lot of people believing it to be true. Or at least that's the best guess I have at this point. Now, while that rumor may have been false, there is something else that could perhaps give us a hint as to what Retro Studios has been working on. When Reggie Fils-Aimé retired from Nintendo, he posted an image of a whole bunch of things he got from a whole bunch of other people working at Nintendo, including Retro Studios. The Retro Studios team created an illustration for Reggie with their signatures all throughout the image, and it had both Metroid and Donkey Kong characters along with Reggie. But there was another character on the bottom left side that was hidden by a Mario statue. This felt very conveniently placed. Why would Reggie block out this very beautiful image made by Retro Studios, hiding the one character that no one could recognize? Up to this point, it's been a while since that image was released, and no one knows for sure who exactly that character is. However, myself and a few others are fairly confident on who it could be. A while ago, I sort of realized that this character, in my mind, pretty much perfectly matches up to Monita from Nintendo Land. You see, if you look carefully through the gaps, there really isn't much space for much more beyond a little rod leading to a monitor-like shaped top of the body and one singular hand. Everything else is just not there. And the only Nintendo character that can match this form is Monita from Nintendo Land. So does that mean that Retro Studios has been working on a new Nintendo Land game this whole time? Maybe that really could be the case. I do think that this is likely Monita hidden behind the statue, but it doesn't have to mean that Retro Studios has been working on a new Nintendo Land game. Maybe they have, but there's another consideration here. Nintendo and Universal are working on actual theme parks here. What if there's some sort of special software throughout the parks that uses Monita. Monita was both the host and sort of tour guide for Nintendo Land, a virtual Nintendo park, so why not repurpose that idea or reuse that idea and fully flesh out Monita for a brand new software that could be used for these brand new Nintendo Universal parks? I think there's a really good chance that could be the case. Perhaps Retro Studios has been working on this software of Monita for a Nintendo Land sort of like game or service for the Nintendo Universal parks. And we wouldn't know about it yet because they are still working on these parks, building them out. When these parks go public, maybe then we will see Monita, and perhaps that will reveal what Retro Studios has been working on this whole time. Now, I know what some of you may be thinking. Is that really all Retro Studios could have been working on this entire time? Just some sort of program for a Nintendo park? Maybe. We do not know how fully fleshed out this may actually be. And it could be the case that they worked on the software for the Nintendo parks, but also made Nintendo Land. Or maybe they did one of those two things, or both those things, and something else. I feel like it's pretty likely that for this 6-year period, at least one major game was cancelled, maybe more. But I also think Retro Studios would have had to have done enough for Nintendo to feel confident that they could take up the reins for Metroid Prime 4, and maybe a new Nintendo Land game or Nintendo Park AI or some sort of software isn't enough. Maybe they would have had to done a little bit more than that. We do know, or at least we hope, that Metroid Prime Trilogy HD has been in the works or is at least ready to release. It's a rumor that is widely believed. It wouldn't shock me if Retro Studios was behind this remaster. And maybe this remaster is more extensive than what we may think. Maybe it's more than just blowing up the resolution and making the controls work for the Nintendo Switch. There could be more than that. There could be some nice graphical improvements, some additional content, and that would definitely take some time and could sort of help us to understand what's been going on since the release of Tropical Freeze and now this whole 6-year period. So maybe between Metroid Prime Trilogy HD, these little Donkey Kong ports, and perhaps some sort of Nintendo Land software for the parks or an actual game, maybe all of that is what they've actually been working on that's going to eventually make it out to the market. But obviously, we don't really know. I hope there's something else. I would love to see another game from Retro Studios because they're an incredible developer. When they do come out with games, they are of the highest quality. So I have full faith that whatever they do come out with, whenever it does come out, it will be really good. And that may very well be the reason why we haven't seen much from Retro Studios, because they haven't been able to come up with a game that is matching the quality that they think they need to come out with. And I'm willing to bet that that's at least part of the issue when it comes to what's been going on with Retro Studios, that they just want to have a really high quality game, and they haven't been able to do it as of late. When I think about that whole situation with the demo that Retro Studios supposedly showed off to Nintendo, maybe it was more than just a proof of concept. Maybe it was based off some sort of engine or other game Retro Studios was working on. Maybe it had something to do with Metroid Prime Trilogy HD. Maybe it had something to do with a whole other game that we haven't seen yet. Considering all the cool ideas we've at least heard about Retro Studios working on, but those games not actually making it out, maybe there's an even cooler idea somewhere that Retro Studios actually has been working on that could end up being a really cool game that may come out sometime soon. Maybe it will finally be revealed in 2020. I'm not betting that it will come out in 2020, but if Retro Studios is now fully working on Metroid Prime 4, maybe that game is entirely done and maybe it could come out this year. I think it's possible. If the game is done, I don't think the pandemic will affect things too much because it's already done. There's not much more to develop. But that's all assuming that they had something they were working on. Maybe they really didn't. Maybe they were working on different ideas and they just didn't complete any of it once Nintendo handed over Metroid Prime 4 to Retro Studios. That is possible. At the very least, I think when Reggie retired and we saw that illustration from Retro Studios, I do think that that was an intentional tease by Reggie and Retro Studios that they were working on something, and it's real and it will materialize at some point. When we will see it, hard to say. Maybe when the Nintendo parks open, or maybe sometime later on. Maybe in this year, maybe the next year. But what do you guys think? What do you guys think Retro Studios has been working on this entire time since the release of Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze? Besides Metroid Prime 4, obviously. Anyways, everyone, thank you so much for listening and watching. This is On Just Restart. I'll see you all really soon. Take care.